Hi and welcome, I'm Neil Bierbaum, and in this video I'm going to show you a science-based method to get feelings out of the way when it comes to getting motivated. You'll learn how you can get yourself motivated for anything, and I mean anything, even stuff you don't feel like doing, without having to, well, wait until you feel like it. And once again, the warning, beware, you'll never be able to hear your own excuses in the same way ever again. And also, don't worry, it won't turn you into a cruel, unfeeling monster. You can still have your feelings when they're useful for you, and you'll know how to manage them when they're not. Now, we've learned in this modern age of gentle parenting to pay attention to our feelings. In many ways, this is a good thing, although it has its drawbacks, especially when it comes to getting motivated. The problem is life is full of, well, problems and things you don't want to do. And life moves at a pace. You don't always have time to nurse your feelings into a better shape. So if you need to feel better before you can get motivated, you're going to miss out on a lot. What's more, if you've been paying attention to your own life, you'll know that your feelings change. One day, you're feeling good about not doing something, and then you find out that you missed out on a great experience and you feel regret, which demonstrates that feelings are unreliable. There's a lot more to that, which I'll unpack in the Self-Mastery series. Another time when you really need your feelings to be out of the way is when you're struggling to get going on a Monday, or to drag yourself to the gym on any given day. It's often because you're waiting for the right feelings to kick in. But what if you're doing it all wrong? What if it has nothing to do with feelings at all, but motivational states? In the first episode in this series, I introduced the matrix of 5 motivational states that I've identified through my work as a high-performance life and executive coach, and which is based on the science and research that is available. There are agitation, when you're pushing too hard; flow, which is that ideal state; animation, which is when we're taking that positive early action towards a goal; the state of rest, which is active relaxation and recovery; and the state of ennui, which is boredom, flatness, which usually ends up in resistance. You can find out more about the 5 states by following the links below. The common understanding is that your motivational state arises out of your feelings towards an activity or event or circumstance. So, for example, I would need to like an activity before I can get animated about it, or I would need to feel like doing it. However, the science has shown that it's actually the other way around. Motivational states can be activated through conscious choice, by a decision, in other words, followed by action. When you do this, your feelings will fall in line. They'll be dragged along in the wake of the action. In other words, you feel much better for having been at work or having exercised than if you hadn't. The research to prove this was done by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, professor of psychology at the University of Chicago back in the 1970s. It was before cell phones and the internet, and he gave his subjects a backpack with a clipboard inside it and a pager. When their pager beeped, the subjects had to take the clipboard from the backpack and make notes. What he was looking for was to know what they were doing and what they were experiencing. And what he found was that people could enter the state of flow, which he also termed the state of optimal experience, with virtually any activity, as long as their approach to the activity met certain conditions. And to summarize those, once again, briefly, he found that the flow state arises when there is intense focus at the outer limit of your skill level on a task or activity where the outcome and the activity itself matters to you. It requires a goal and an activity that can provide immediate feedback. So now you can see from that list that the word enjoy is only one factor, and it's not even an essential one. You might not enjoy studying, for example, but if it produces a meaningful outcome, for example, you want to become a lawyer, then you can use studying to get into the flow state because it meets all the other criteria. It challenges your skill level. It captures your attention. There's a goal and immediate feedback. In other words, you're either understanding the subject or not. You're either remembering what you need to or not. Another example of an activity that meets those conditions would be, say, playing a musical instrument. It challenges your skill level, captures your attention, and playing to entertain your audience without embarrassing yourself would probably matter to you. The immediate feedback would be whether you're hitting the notes and keeping time or not. And hopefully, from this you can see that you're not going to get into that flow state by watching television or scrolling on your phone. And I trust you can also see that there are a lot more activities that fit into the category of activities that will get you into the flow state than most of us would realize or want to admit. The problem for many of us is that with all that gentle parenting, we've elevated choice to an almost sacred status. Gen Zers, do I call them, won't do anything they don't want to do. And yet here's the rub. According to Csikszentmihalyi in his book Flow, The Psychology of Happiness, and I quote, "Some things we are initially forced to do against our will turn out in the course of time to be intrinsically rewarding. Often children and adults need external incentives to take the first steps in any activity that requires a difficult restructuring of attention. Most enjoyable activities are not natural. They demand an effort that initially one is reluctant to make. But once the interaction starts to provide feedback to the person's skills, it usually begins to be intrinsically rewarding. So that hobby you've been threatening to start but aren't sure if you really want to, that DIY task you've been putting off because you don't feel like it, that sorting task, that spreadsheet of your expenses, that report that your boss has been asking for, all these activities can meet the conditions for flow. And yes, the outcome can even matter to you. For example, if you fix a broken lock that's been delaying you every time you leave for work and putting pressure on your day, submitting your tax returns, getting the boss off your back and showing her that you can do a better job than she expected, you can connect to each of these outcomes in a way that they matter to you. Then, when you bring your full attention to the task and do it to the best of your ability, you activate the conditions for the flow state. The German philosopher Eckhart Tolle, he of the Power of Now fame, puts his own spin on this when he says in a later book, A New Earth, enthusiasm means there is deep enjoyment in what you do, plus the added element of a goal or a vision that you work towards. His use of enjoyment is specific. By his definition, the joy does not come from what you do, it flows into what you do. In other words, you can enjoy any mindfully chosen activity done with full presence that is not just a means to an end. In addition, if it challenges your skill level for that activity, and if it has a predetermined outcome or goal, it is likely to get you into the flow state. This is true regardless of how you feel when you start out. In fact, Csikszentmihalyi pointed to the expanded sense of self that you have when you've completed the activity and exited the flow state, presumably to rest. This expanded sense of self arises largely as a result of your sense of achievement, firstly at having gotten up off the couch, and secondly, at having completed a task, learnt a new skill, or achieved a goal. On the other hand, if you lie around doing nothing, waiting for your feelings to shift, you're more likely to remain with those same feelings. They may even become worse. Then you'd be likely to take that as evidence that you don't have the energy and you'd spiral downwards into the state of ennui. As you can see, either path becomes a self-reinforcing spiral. So the call is to act despite your feelings, and then get out your clipboard and gather the evidence of what impact the activity has, not on your feelings, but on your motivational state. You ask yourself, am I energized? Am I more mentally clear? Do I feel a slight sense of accomplishment? And importantly, could I use this energy to bridge myself to another task and another? If you did that, how do you believe you would feel at the end of that day? Each time you gather and review the evidence in this way, you'll strengthen your case for doing it again the next time you need to get going and you don't feel like it. And by the way, how to gather and review evidence will be the subject of this month's masterclass for paying subscribers. And soon, you'll learn to attach your attention to your motivational state rather than to your feelings. And when you do that, when you attach your attention, as I said, to your motivational state rather than to your feelings, you'll notice two things. Firstly, that your feelings will still be there, however, they'll lose their power over you. They'll become like a radio that plays in the background. You can tune into them when you choose to and process them when you feel you have to, but you don't have to identify with them. You don't have to become a slave to them. Secondly, you'll probably find that while there are still ups and downs, the general level of your feelings will have improved if you do this regularly. To quote Csikszentmihalyi on this, living in this way lifts the course of life to a different level. Alienation gives way to involvement, enjoyment replaces boredom, helplessness turns into a feeling of control, and psychic energy works to reinforce the sense of self. The catchphrase I give to my clients who have a tendency to introspect and drift into melancholia is this: if you haven't solved your problems, or the world's problems, within 20 minutes, go and wash the dishes. In other words, allow yourself the time to process and then cut out after 20 minutes. Without fail, my clients report back that this works wonders for them. In fact, I had one client who said, my lows are now higher than my highs used to be. So I hope you can see that you don't need to wait for your feelings to shift in order to be motivated, that your feelings are subordinate to your motivational state, that you are always able to get going just because you say so. And finally, as I said in the beginning, knowing this, I trust that you won't be able to look at your feelings or listen to them or your excuses in the same way ever again. To find out more on the motivational states, read any one of the books in my personal effectiveness series, available on Amazon, details on the link below. You can also sign up for an online self-coaching course or acquire about talks and one-on-one executive coaching, all in the links below. Thank you. And if you found value from this, please remember to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.